Hello, this is your Associate Pastor, Father Michael Lampe, coming to you with another video reflection. And today I am reflecting upon the readings for Tuesday, March 24th. Our first reading is from the prophet Ezekiel, and our gospel passage is from the Gospel according to John. In this gospel passage, we hear the story about Jesus visiting the pools of Bethsaida, and how a man who had been ill for 38 years, who has longed for and desired to enter into the healing waters of those pools, was unable to do so. And Jesus comes and asks if he wants to be well. Now, this is probably pretty confusing for many of us. What's the big deal about these pools of water? Well, it was believed in the time of Jesus Christ that the angel Raphael would come down from heaven and he would enter into the waters. Raphael, being an angel of healing, would imbue into these waters some of his healing power, or he himself would be present in the waters, bringing about the healing. And so when the water was stirred up, it was believed that was the moment when St. Raphael entered the water. And so the first person to enter into those pools of Bethsaida, when the water was stirred up by the angel Raphael, would be able to be healed miraculously of their illness. Now, this particular man was paralyzed, and so for him to be able to get to the pools first, after it had been stirred up by the angel, was pretty much impossible, because he was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. So in order for him to get there, it would take longer than for anyone else. And that's what he tells Jesus when he says that when he's on the way to the water, somebody else gets there before him. And so Jesus offers him a great gift, direct healing, not through the mediation of the angel St. Raphael, as awesome as that is, but direct healing from him, healing from God. And he needed that healing from God because he couldn't do what was necessary for his healing himself. He couldn't bring himself to the waters quick enough to be able to be healed. He needed the healing grace of Jesus Christ. And isn't that true of all of us? All of us need the healing grace of Jesus Christ. Another aspect of this gospel passage that got my attention anyway, was near the end, where Jesus says to him, "Look, you are well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse may happen to you." This helps us to understand that as bad as physical ailments are, ailments of the soul, such as the guilt of sin, is much worse, because it damages our relationship with God, and our relationship with God determines whether or not we will be with him forever in heaven. The state of our souls determines whether or not we will be with God in heaven. And so physical ailments, as bad as they are, will not prevent us from entering into heavenly bliss, but ailments of the soul can prevent it or slow us down from entrance into heaven, or perhaps not reach the heights of heavenly bliss that we could have otherwise. And so Jesus is warning us that we should avoid sin, that we should not sin, that we should sin no more, so that nothing worse may happen to us. Jesus made the man physically well, but even more importantly is the healing of the man's soul. And so Jesus is advising him not to fall into sin, so that he can be with God forever in heaven. So Jesus provides this healing grace, but what is the source of this healing grace? Well, of course it is Jesus Christ himself, but in what way does Jesus choose to give us his grace? The most clear and direct way is himself on the cross. All the graces that come to us were won for us by his gift of himself on the cross, a gift so pleasing that it more than makes up for all the sins of all of humanity for all time. And so this is really awesome. But also awesome is that our first reading is alluding to that reality, because it mentions the temple to the prophet Ezekiel, but this isn't any temple, this is the new temple. And the new temple is what? It's the body of Christ. So the old covenant temple was the one where they had sacrifice of animals. The new covenant temple is Jesus Christ himself, his body. And so when it talks about this river flowing from the right side of the temple, it's a reference to Jesus's pierced side, which was his right side. We know it was his right side because the Roman soldiers were always trained to attack on the right. They would attack on the right because the right side was the side where the warriors would hold their swords, and the left side was the side with the shield. So if the left side is protected by a shield, they're going to attack on the right, which is less protected. So they were always trained to attack on the right. And so when the soldiers pierced the side of Jesus, it was his right side. And likewise, we hear that this temple that the prophet Ezekiel sees, this temple of the future, this new temple, represents Jesus Christ. And the river that flows from that temple is the river of grace, much like the blood and water that flowed out of the side of Jesus on the cross, which represents all of the sacraments. And so the grace that God gives us, that nourishes us like the trees mentioned in our first reading, are all coming from the grace won for us on the cross. Christ pouring out his love for us, pouring out his life for us, wins for us the grace of conversion and salvation, wins for us all the graces that we receive, wins for us the grace of healing, much as the paralyzed man was healed. And so he was able to continue his journey, his physical journey, but also the grace of God helps us to continue our spiritual journey, a spiritual journey that we hope will end with him forever in heaven. Thank you for joining me for another video reflection. God bless you.